Hi everyone. Today I thought I would list my 10 all-time favorite television shows from the 60s to, the last few years. And some of the and I'm probably going to forget a great show or two, but these are the ones that I remembered in the past day or so. But some of them that didn't make my list that I really love or I'll just talk about include Get Smart with, of course, Don Adams in the 60s. I always loved that show with the, what was it called? The bubble of protection or whatever. So nobody could hear them talking and it never worked. Candid Camera. I always used to love that show in the 60s, 70s, I guess. Now, Seinfeld. I haven't watched many episodes of Seinfeld back in the day when it was on television. I completely ignored it. I hardly watched any comedy shows in the 80s or 90s or 2000s. Most of them I just had no interest in. But seeing the clips that I have seen, Seinfeld was hilarious, and I know now that I would have enjoyed it. Happy Days I used to like, although I prefer the earlier seasons. The later ones got a little too cute for me when they made Fonzie the main character in the show. It's the first season or two that I really liked the most. Yeah, and by the time of Chachi and all that, is like I was out of there. Unsolved Mysteries was a really cool show. I used to like that. Roseanne, yes and no. It was funny, but at the same time, I kind of found the like John Goodman. He's a great actor and all that, but I found him and Roseanne just a little annoying sometimes, I guess. So, but it was funny too at the same time. Um, I don't really consider this a TV show. It's like a late night talk show, but I loved The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He was just so witty, just so funny. And I always loved his monologues, especially when his jokes didn't work. It was usually funnier when they didn't work and his reactions. The Jeffersons, I really liked that show. That was very funny. Good Times. I know that, what was his name? JJ. He played Jimmy Walker. That's it. He played JJ on the show. I know that he didn't like the character after a while, like Dynamite making it, you know, like a really over the top, goofy character. But it was funny and it was pretty good. Columbo, I like that show. And, every episode, right? Columbo's walking away and he always comes back to ask one more question. Another comedy show that I've never really watched much, I've seen maybe one or two shows or clips. Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think I would have loved that show. My kind of humor. And I need to start watching it sometime. Monty Python's Flying Circus. I love that show, and I love all three of the movies. That could have been in my top 10 actually, but it isn't. And another great show, because my favorite movie is Goodfellas. So I should have been a fan of The Sopranos, but I never watched it. And yeah, so I regret that. And, I can watch it now, and I should start watching it at some point. So I've made a video showing my top 10 in order. And like I said, hopefully I haven't forgotten a great show that I love. So here we go. Number 10 is Bewitched. Yeah, back in the 60s, 58, when I was like, I guess, 9, 10 years old, I remember coming home for lunch from school, and usually this was on, or the Flintstones, another show that I love, the cartoon, the Flintstones. And I was in love with Elizabeth Montgomery back in the 60s when I was a little boy. Yeah. And I liked the two Darrens. It was kind of odd at first when they replaced, the first Darren because of health issues, sadly, that he had. But the second Darren was very good too. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed that show. So that's number 10. Number 9, The Brady Bunch. I also watched that, of course, in the 60s, and then all of the repeats in the 70s. It was always on television back in the day. And yeah, so I was a big fan of The Brady Bunch. Number 8, The Waltons. My girlfriend Molly mentioned this series recently, and yeah, back in the 70s, I really did enjoy it. And as usual, though, as the seasons went on, it got a little more, I don't know, cutesy or whatever, and they started to lose interest. But the early seasons are really good. 10, 9, 8. Make sure I'm getting these right here. 10, 9, 8. Okay. Yep. So number 7, All in the Family with good old Archie Bunker. Now, a show like this, I don't think it would it would play today because Archie Bunker was basically racist. But deep inside, he was a good person. And I think as the seasons went on, he kind of did change. But at the same time, and, of course, Meatball and the whole cast was great. And Sammy Davis Jr. guest starring. But once again, as the seasons went on, it got cuter, more cutesy. And it was Archie's place later on, and I stopped watching by then. And I think Archie Bunker had adopted a little girl or something, and sadly Edith had passed away. So I think after Edith had passed away, I was done with the series. But it was a great series. Number 6. MASH. Yeah. So when it was first on TV, and it was a huge hit when it was, as soon as it was on television, I had no interest in it because, it was about the Korean War and all that. Even though it was a comedy, it's like, no, I'm not watching this. And then I remember about 1979, 1980, I would be working as a security guard, and I'd be off work. Yeah, I'd work from 11 at night till I think 7 in the morning. So not much on in the morning to watch. And so with my breakfast, I started watching repeats of MASH, and I loved it. And once again, as always, I prefer the earlier seasons. I loved Frank Burns. I loved that character. And when Winchester took over, I didn't care for the show as much. Winchester was good, of course, but I just thought Frank Burns was such a great, funny character, kind of like a Don Knotts. And so I really enjoyed that. Number 5, and I don't know if you can hear, but they're cutting the grass. Oh, my window's right here, and they're cutting the grass, but I have a good microphone, so you probably can't hear it. Number 5, Breaking Bad. Yes. I don't think I watched it when it was airing, but when it was on, or maybe I forget. I don't think I watched it right away though. But one day I was kind of bored, and so I started to watch Breaking Bad. And it is slow at first. I'm still trying to get Molly to watch it. But, the first one or two or three shows are a little slow, but it's, building up the characters and all that. And I ended up loving the whole show. It was excellent. Yeah. Number 4. This brings a smile to my face, as you can see. The Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. Don Knotts, possibly my favorite TV comedy character, or right at the top. Andy Griffith was great. Gomer Pyle, all of the other characters. So funny. The town drunk, whatever his name was. And once again, once Don Knotts left, it was still funny. It was, but not quite. I think when it went into color, it kind of wasn't the same. But yeah, definitely one of the greatest, for me, one of the greatest comedy series. So number 3 is Fernwood Tonight. Does anybody remember this late night show? It was a takeoff on talk shows. And then after a season or two, they changed the name to America Tonight. But it was basically the same show. Martin Mull as the Johnny Carson type character. I loved Fred Willard as the co-host. He was so funny. He's one of my all-time favorite comedians. And Happy Kine and the Mirth Makers, the band leader. And it was just one of the most crazy shows. And it's not officially, I don't think, on DVD. Somebody's made a, DVD with all of the episodes, though, from a VHS tape. And there are some clips on YouTube. But yeah, that's definitely one of... And also Mary Hartman, which was, I think, after this or before this. It was another crazy show. It got to a point, though, that it was just too crazy for me. But Fernwood Tonight, America Tonight, I loved. Number 2 is SCTV, direct from Toronto. Or actually, they started in, I think, Edmonton, Alberta. But yeah, this is where, John Candy, all of the other ones, Rick Moranis, Dave Thomas, all of them. They're so funny. Catherine O'Hara, all of the characters, I love them all. So many funny, and of course later on, they were on American TV, on NBC. And Martin Short was on the show. I love him. He's another one of my favorite comedians, and Molly's too. Yeah, so SCTV. I enjoyed much more than Saturday Night Live, which was also, sometimes great, the early years. And number 1, what do you think number 1 is? When this show was on television, once again, I had no interest in it because I wasn't watching these comedy shows or situation comedies, like Friends and all of these popular comedy shows. I had no interest in them. But when this was on, of course, Netflix, one day I started to watch it and I became a huge fan of The Office. It's my number 1 favorite show. And I prefer, once again, as always, almost always, the early years when Steve Carell was on the show. Actually, after he left, I just never watched those shows. I know I should sometime, but I've even, they're not quite as good as the earlier years. But I loved Dwight. I loved all of the characters. the chili guy, what's his name? Forget at the moment. But he has a book, Brian Baumgartner, on The Office about, talking with the different cast, talking with the different crew, the cast, mixing up my words here. And it's excellent. And I'm also listening to a podcast on Spotify called The Office Ladies. And they're going through each and every episode. And it's really good. So, yeah, I love The Office. It's hilarious. You gotta love Michael as the as the lead. But like I said, all of the characters on the show were great. And it's my number one favorite TV show of all time. So I would love your thoughts below on what are some of your favorite TV shows, and maybe talk about if you agree with me on some of the shows that I've been mentioning. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.